Okay, before we move forward, there is one little thing that I do want to work out because I noticed in some of my experimentation that I was not getting the right deformations using just the joints that I have here. And the area that was of concern is down here basically. This single joint that I'm currently using as the root doesn't exert enough meaningful influence over this part of the body to get the kinds of deformations that I want. So all that means is I just need to add in a couple more joints. So this becomes a good opportunity to talk about how to do that. So I am going to pop into my side view here, and I'm going to go in to the rigging menu and go to Skeleton, Create Joints. And I'm just going to click on the root joint at the moment, and that way it starts to activate creating a new joint from there. And I'm just going to kind of go down as low as I can to sort of match the position of the bottommost portion of the character. And I'll just kind of keep this in more or less a straight line, kind of simulating the spine a little bit. And there we go, I got a joint now. But here's the thing, what you'll notice is that we have a single joint here that's pointing both upwards and downwards. This used to be our root, but now we're going to try to treat this joint as our root. So we actually have to do a command called reroot skeleton. So I click on this new end joint here, and I'm just going to call it first off root. And then I'm going to go to skeleton and choose, let's find it here, reroot skeleton, there we are. And what that does is it just says, nope, this is where everything starts from. This is the beginning of the hierarchy. And it doesn't affect anything else. So now what I want to do is to come in and from the side view, or front view, sorry, I'm just going to come in here and create some more joints. So we're just going to go to Skeleton, Create Joints, and now we're going to click on the root. And I'm going to bring this joint up over here toward the shoulder / deltoid region. And somewhere probably right around there is probably pretty good. And I only need to create that one joint. So I'll go ahead and I'll rename this L_shoulder for left shoulder. And I will want to go in and mirror this joint as well. So I can go in and click on the, I can actually click on probably just that joint there and mirror that one over. So the way to do that is to go to Skeleton and Mirror Joints. I'm just going to go into the option box real quick. And this is saying, you know, which axis do you want to mirror across? The most common one is the YZ axis. And we don't really need to worry about mirror function at this stage, but the search for and replace with is quite helpful because depending on how you named your all the joints, and especially if you have a lot of joints that are going to be mirrored over by this, this will do the renaming for you so long as you specify the naming correctly. So in this case, I would want to rename my joint to R_shoulder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for L_, and I'm going to replace it with R_, and then click on mirror. And now I have a joint over here called R_shoulder. And I think the only thing that I really want to do here is just have a look at what these look like from the side, and that's okay. That seems to be fine where they're located there. So, all right, cool. We have now created some new joints, rerouted the skeleton, and we are now ready to start moving on to skinning our skeleton, or skinning our character rather. I do notice, however, that if I turn on and off the joints group here, that the new joints that I just created are not coming along with it. So I'm just going to select all those and just make sure that they are all added to that group, or to that layer, excuse me. Okay, so with that done, let's go in and actually start our process of skinning. And we need to think about which joints are actually going to contribute to this skinning. We don't want every joint in here to be skinned to the body because it's unnecessary. So let's consider that we definitely want the root, right? I might save that for last to select because it can be a little bit difficult to read. I do need the shoulders, so I'll select both of those. I do need the head control, and I need all the neck controls. And I think that's about it. We're not going to worry about the jaw control here. Or the eyes, because those are there for different reasons, how those joints work. This is just an end effector, and yeah, we'll select that one there, the root. And now after we've selected all of our joints, we come in and shift select our mesh. And we're going to go to Skin, Bind Skin, and go to the option box. So what we want to do is bind this geometry to these joints according to the selected joints. In fact, actually I'm going to reset these settings so you know what they normally look like. So bind to, we don't want joint hierarchy because that will choose every joint within that hierarchy chain. We just want it to be the selected joints. Bind method's fine, skinning method is fine, normalize weights is fine, and weight distribution is fine as well. We can allow multiple bind poses. That can probably be helpful to us in the future, perhaps. But I do want to reduce the number of maximum influences. What this talks about here is on a per vertex basis, how many joints can have influence over a single vertex. And 5 is a little bit high, I think, for just a head. So I'm going to put that down to 3. And all the rest of this should be fine. So now I'm just going to click on Bind Skin. All right. So now, if I just were to go in here and play around with this, hopefully this will work. There we go. I have my head moving around. It does definitely have some weird distortions that are going on there. All right. And I have these shoulders as well, which they don't currently have any controls on them. We could potentially add controls later if we wanted to. If we wanted to make the character look like he's shrugging his shoulders, for instance. And just confirming that everything is working. So pull that back. There we go. Pull this guy back. Everything rotates with it. So very good. Now, I'll just go ahead and save this as, put this as week, I'm sorry, as 3. And now it's the process of, the joyous process of painting skin weights. So if we look at the model as it is right now, you'll notice, of course, that we have some of these weird deformations that are occurring. The face is flattening. There's these really big, ugly artifacts that are happening, lots of stretching in weird ways. And this just has to do with the way that Maya, by default, distributes the weights, distributes the influence from any one joint across the surface. It never does a good job. It's always guaranteed to be bad. So it really is up to us to go in and be really specific about it and figure out how to make it work for us. So the way that I do this is to come in and I will start from a side view here. I'm going to click on the mesh and I'm going to go to the Paint Skin Weights option. So we're going to go to Skin, Paint Skin Weights, and the option box. And that's going to open it up in the actual tool menu over here on the side. Now I do have this put here on my custom shelf because I use it a lot. So from now on I'm just going to click on this button here whenever I want to go to Paint Skin Weights. Likewise, this is for mirroring the skin weights as well. So that one's found under Skin, Mirror Skin Weights. We'll talk about what that means in just a moment, but if it pretty much does what it sounds like it does. So if we look at this, head control is currently most of the cranium, but it starts to get not as much influence as it goes down. So areas that are completely white means that this particular joint that we have selected here has 100% influence over those vertices and no other joint has any influence. But when we start getting down into values less than 1, then it means that there's a shared influence on these vertices across multiple joints. Now, if I just look through here, you can see Neko 2 is having some pretty big influence there. Neko 1 is getting way up here. Shoulder root and right shoulder and left shoulder. Basically, we need to go in there and just really specify to Maya where we feel the cutoffs should be for these skins. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out with head control because really what I want to do is say, hey, I want the head to have full influence over everything here. And that way I can make sure I don't have any weights that are sort of in between values. I will have 100% weighting on the head control and 0% weighting on everything else. And then I can go back and actually gradually add in my weights to specific parts of the body at 100% influence and then start blending between them. And I find this to be a process that is much more guaranteed to make it easier for you and to not end up with having weights that are going to cause problems. So start with head control. I have that selected here. And in this menu here, I have the ability to paint, which I usually just leave that on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Add to make sure that I'm adding all this influence. And currently I have an opacity of 0.1, so I'm just going to bring my opacity up to 1, my value up to 1, and I'm going to press Flood, and that means that it's going to apply this across the entire surface, or whatever is selected. And now, head control, turn the whole head white. So if I were to go in here and rotate any control here, you'll see that it's actually rotating the entire geometry. Okay, so back to paint skin weights. What I want to do now, this only works if you have the mesh selected. What I want to do now is to go in and start painting up other areas of the head. But before I do this, I usually like to make sure that I have a little bit of an animation made so that I can more easily test what's going on here. So what I'll do is I'm just going to start out at grabbing these three controls, the neck and the head controls, and I'm just going to hit S to put down a keyframe for them at frame 1. And I'm going to come down to frame 10. Let's reduce the size of my timeline here. Frame 10, and I'm just going to rotate these backwards. All right, I'm not worried about what the head's doing right now. I'm just rotating all these backwards in equal amount. So they're all rotated back by about negative 12.5. And then I'm just going to come back here. I'm going to, on frame 1, I'll hold down the middle mouse button and click and drag that to frame 11 and set another zeroed frame here. So we go from back there back to, oops, I didn't select everything, that's why. Make sure I have all of these controls selected when I do that. Bring that over to frame 11 and press S. Always a great idea to check everything that you do to make sure that you've done what you think you've done. And I'm going to now go to frame 20 and I'm going to rotate this in the opposite direction so that they go down. All right. Now the reason why I did this is so that I can just scrub the timeline to see what the changes are that I want to be playing around with, instead of having to go in and select all of those controls each time I want to test something. This is much faster this way. It also allows me to turn off all of these controls. So I'm just going to say show NURBS curves and turn that off. I'll leave the joints on, however. So now let's go in and back to the paint skin weights and think about what we want to do next. So my next joint down is neck 02. And what I'm going to do is come in, I'm going to go into vertex mode, and I'm also going to choose my lasso selection tool here. And it's going to come in and say vertex. And I want to draw a line that sits above here, above this joint, which is neck 02, and just kind of comes in under the chin. So if I just draw this line kind of like this, now this doesn't have to be absolutely perfectly precise, just so that it's good enough. And I want to be mindful that there is actually a jaw right here, so I got to be careful with that. Now, as I did that, notice how nothing was selected, and the reason for that is because I have this joint here visible, and joints have a higher selection priority than vertices, which so means as I went over that joint, I didn't select anything. That just basically selects the joint. So I need to make sure that I turn off the ability to select joints, which is up here in my pick masks. Let's turn that off. All right, let's try this again. So draw my selection. Probably make a bigger selection there. Bring it down and get that again there, holding down Control and Shift. And so this area here now, I might even get rid of this, all these vertices that I have selected here are going to be where I want to put 100% influence for this joint. So I'm going to go back to my skin weights. I'm going to make sure I have neck 02 selected there. My values of my values of 1 and opacity of 1, and just click Flood. So now all those vertices have ended up flooded with that value. And so the next thing I want to do, come down to neck 01, and we will do the same thing basically. I'm going to go back to my lasso tool and make sure I'm in vertex mode. Now what I'm going to do is hold down Shift this time, and as I hold down Shift I'm going to make a big selection here, but if I start going over what is already selected, like these vertices here, by holding down Shift it will deselect them. So we'll come out here, grab that, and by doing it this way I make sure that I get all the vertices that were just below. I don't miss anything. Now I'm holding down Control here and dragging a selection around everything else that was left behind, making sure not to lose any of these ones. So we'll go back to Paint Skin Weights, Neko 1, Flood. All right. Now, the next one that I want to do is the shoulder root, which is going to be everything below here. So I'm just going to hold down Shift and drag a big selection around everything, and Control, get rid of the rest of this. Paint Skin Weights, shoulder root, Flood. Okay, and now finally I want to go in and attend to the shoulders themselves, because right now we've kind of left them out. And to do this, I am going to go in and let's see, we'll say we're going to choose our left shoulder here, and I might try to do this in the perspective view and see if I can pull this off. Go back to Vertex and my my lasso tool there, and I'm just going to hold down Shift again and drag a selection kind of around here like this. Actually, let us do it. I'm just going to deselect all these. So let's go in and just drag it without there being a previous selection. Something like this will probably be fine. Okay. Might even give it a little bit more influence. Holding down Control and Shift together, which will add to the selection. All right, so I'm going to go back into Paint Skin Weights and flood that region. And now here's the cool thing. Because Maya can actually understand the symmetry of this rig, I can mirror across the skin weights that I have on this particular joint. Actually, it really does it across the entire skeleton. So what I'm going to do is, in order to get the same kind of influence on this side that I have over here, I'm going to come into Skin, Mirror Skin Weights, and then just go to the option box. Again, you'll see that it's going across the YZ axis, and it's currently set to positive to negative. This is the positive side, this is the negative side, so that's exactly what we want to have happen. And I just use some basic controls here. I use closest point on surface, and my influence associations I usually use as closest joint for the first one and 1-to-1 as the second one. So I'll click on Mirror, and now if I come in here and let's go back to Paint Skin Weights, you'll see that my right shoulder has the same influence as my left shoulder, which is really helpful.